This is also a time of change for my family. I count on the loving help of my darling wife, Camilla, during so much of my life and duty. With Catherine beside him, our new Prince and Princess of Wales will, I know.
The question is, how will she compare to the people's princess, Princess Diana?
The most photographed woman in the world, Princess Diana was adored by people from every corner of the globe.
What just happened inside the royal family has everyone talking, and it's unlike anything we've seen before. Just 1 minute ago, the palace revealed an announcement that could completely change how the monarchy is seen across the world. But what does it mean? Who is really behind this shocking move? And is this the start of a new chapter, or the beginning of the end? This isn't just another royal update. This is a turning point, one that has left even insiders stunned. So let's break down exactly what was said, why it matters so much, and what it could mean for the future of the crown. Silence before the storm. The moment it happened, nobody needed the details. Just one short line on the official royal website shattered years of carefully rehearsed tradition. No explanation, no context, just a stark statement. A formal announcement would be made at 6 p.m. For a monarchy where nothing ever unfolds without choreography, the bluntness was deafening. No leaks fed to trusted journalists, no hints whispered through palace aides, not even the usual quiet buildup of rumors. Only a timestamp, and that alone sent shockwaves through the nation and far beyond. The silence itself became the alarm. Phones inside newsrooms rang off the hook. Anchors stretched airtime, speculating endlessly on possibilities they could not confirm. Was it a sudden health scare? An abdication? A scandal breaking loose? With nothing to hold on to, theories spiraled wildly, some ridiculous, others uncomfortably plausible. Even veteran royal reporters, usually armed with insider notes and talking points, admitted they were in the dark. If this was planned, it had sidestepped every gatekeeper. And in the monarchy, silence without structure almost never means safety. As speculation churned, the attention quietly shifted. A missing piece of the puzzle revealed itself. William and Kate had canceled a scheduled appearance earlier that day. At first, it seemed like a small detail, but under the circumstances, it loomed large. If an announcement was coming from the king or queen, surely they would be the ones to speak. But they weren't. Instead, the spotlight leaned toward the younger royals. The timing was too precise to be a coincidence. The country wasn't preparing for gossip anymore. The atmosphere had turned heavy, expectant. People weren't asking about titles or ceremonies. They were bracing for something that could redefine the monarchy itself. When the clock finally struck 6, the wait ended. The screen lit up, but it wasn't Charles or Camilla in front of the cameras. It was William and Kate, alone. There were no grand thrones behind them, no glittering coats of arms or ceremonial guards at attention. Just the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge in what looked like a simple office, quiet, unembellished.
Prince William, Kate Middleton is Princess of Wales, for example. She's also the Duchess of Cambridge.
But strangely powerful. And in that moment, they commanded more authority than any display of jewels or pageantry could. For the first time in recent memory, the message of the monarchy came not from the sovereign, but from the heirs. And they weren't speaking as figureheads bound by ritual. They were speaking as leaders. William began with a tone so steady it cut sharper than any rehearsed royal script. He didn't reach for ceremonial greetings or ancient invocations. He spoke plainly, directly, with a conviction that made every word heavier. The monarchy is not just a symbol, it's a responsibility. That single line landed like a quiet reckoning. It wasn't rebellion, but it was redirection. Kate followed with equal resolve. Her words carried clarity without aggression, grace without passivity. "This isn't about tradition," she said. "It's about trust." And with those words, Centuries of ritual were condensed into something that felt startlingly modern. For once, the crown wasn't about who wore it. It was about who could be trusted to bear its weight. There were no advisors hovering nearby, no carefully staged family portraits to signal approval from above. William and Kate were on their own, yet their presence felt larger than the institution itself. It wasn't a performance, it was a declaration. The monarchy had not been rejected, it had been redefined. The Diana Initiative. Then came the bombshell, the moment that transformed a solemn broadcast into a seismic turning point. Kate stepped forward with calm determination and unveiled what she called the Diana Initiative. But this wasn't a tribute carved in nostalgia or a symbolic nod to the past. It was something far bolder, a reclamation, a reset, a decision to take Diana's legacy out of the shadowed corners of memory and place it back into the center of public life. This wasn't about flowers at Kensington Palace or mournful tributes each August.
Flowers, balloons, and tributes lovingly placed outside Kensington Palace to mark the 25th anniversary of Princess Diana's death.
It wasn't about documentaries replaying old wounds. It was about taking Diana's values, compassion, transparency, service, and building them into a living global movement. The Diana Initiative would exist not as another charitable banner with royal signatures, but as a fully formed nonprofit designed to act with reach and purpose. It was built on principles Diana embodied: care for the vulnerable, unflinching honesty in the face of scrutiny, and a relentless focus on people over protocol. Kate wasn't lending her name. She was offering her full presence. From the moment she spoke it into existence, she made it clear. This wouldn't be about red carpets, staged photo ops, or carefully choreographed appearances. She would be on the ground, in shelters, hospitals, schools, flood zones, not as an observer, but as an active participant. It wasn't admiration she sought, it was usefulness. The public understood the weight of this instantly. The Diana Initiative wasn't simply launched, it was felt. Kate wasn't stepping into Diana's shoes, but carving her own path using Diana's spirit as compass. This was no imitation. It was continuation, evolution, redemption. For decades, Diana had fought from the margins, battling the constraints of a rigid institution. Kate was stepping into the same struggle, but from the very center of royal power. That shift alone made it transformative. Diana had wielded kindness as quiet defiance. Kate was wielding it as leadership. The reaction was instant. Social media erupted, hashtags crowning Kate the People's Queen, a title once whispered about Diana, now reborn without hesitation. Headlines across the world carried the story, not with jewel-studded photos, but with recognition of something far more powerful: public trust. But inside the palace, the response was starkly different. No congratulations from King Charles, no supportive statements from Queen Camilla. The official royal accounts remained frozen, as though nothing had happened at all. And that silence was not neutral. It was deliberate. Insiders whispered that Charles was blindsided. He reportedly turned to his aides and asked, stunned, what did they do? It wasn't anger so much as shock. Just as he had begun to settle into his reign, the spotlight had been wrenched away, not gradually, but in an instant. For Camilla, however, the silence carried an even sharper edge. She had spent years rebuilding her public image, carefully moving from scandal toward quiet respectability. Yet in a single announcement, the ghost of Diana had returned to the center stage, not as a haunting, but as a mission renewed by the very woman who now stood as future queen.
After years in the public eye, here's proof that Kate Middleton is ready to be queen.
Kate's initiative hadn't been designed as an attack, but it cut deep all the same. Diana's name carried a weight Camilla could never escape, and now it had been reignited with purpose, clarity, and public devotion. Behind the palace doors, unease brewed, not only because the initiative had captured the people so swiftly, but because William and Kate had acted outside the usual palace channels. No clearance, no committees, no rubber stamps. It was independent, It was decisive, it was unstoppable. And independence within monarchy can feel like betrayal, a new philosophy of service. Yet as the palace hesitated, William and Kate moved forward with determination. They weren't aiming for headlines, though headlines came anyway. They weren't crafting ceremonial moments, though history would mark them as such. Instead, they were planting a philosophy: relevance, transparency, presence. 3 words the monarchy had long invoked in speeches, but rarely lived in practice. William and Kate were now embodying them, not as slogans, but as action. No more ribbon-cutting ceremonies that meant nothing. No more balcony waves while communities suffered unseen. No more gestures built only for photo ops. From now on, royal engagement would mean engagement. Their presence wasn't limited to palaces. It was felt in overcrowded clinics, in broken classrooms, in communities torn apart by floods. They weren't performing royalty. They were practicing leadership. This wasn't rebellion. It was correction. A recognition that tradition without relevance is a slow death sentence. And while the public applauded this bold new path, the palace recoiled. Because in any institution built on hierarchy, change, no matter how righteous, always feels like disruption. For William and Kate, it wasn't about defiance, it was about duty. But to those still clinging to legacy, their evolution looked like betrayal. A silent war within. What followed after the Diana Initiative was not just another headline. It was the spark that illuminated a truth the monarchy had avoided for generations. Its survival was no longer guaranteed by tradition alone. For centuries, crowns, carriages, and ceremonies had been enough to keep the mystique alive. But now, something more potent was pulling the public closer: sincerity. And sincerity was exactly what William and Kate were offering. The announcement didn't simply dominate news cycles. It rewrote them. Broadcasts that usually opened with the king's schedule or the queen consort's engagements now shifted.
Once known as the other woman, Camilla is now the queen. Kind of. The new king's darling wife has become the queen consort.
Every sentence seemed to begin with William and Kate. Not because protocol demanded it, but because relevance did. Inside Buckingham Palace, the mood was uneasy. Charles had spent a lifetime preparing for this role, patiently waiting his turn through decades of public skepticism. He had finally stepped into the crown with dignity, determined to carry forward stability. And yet, almost overnight, he found himself eclipsed, not by scandal or chaos, but by a new vision of leadership born within his own family. Reports suggested Charles wasn't furious. He was hollowed out. Those close to him described his reaction with one word: stunned. He wasn't sure whether to see the initiative as bold innovation or quiet betrayal. Privately, he confided to an aide, "The spotlight is gone." His words weren't dripping with bitterness, but with a sorrow far more piercing. After a lifetime of waiting for recognition, it was slipping through his fingers just as he had finally grasped it. For William, the silence that followed from his father was the hardest cut. He hadn't unveiled the Diana Initiative to upstage Charles. He hadn't sought to fracture the monarchy's unity. His mission had always been about responsibility, about ensuring that the crown could still matter to ordinary people. But instead of solidarity, instead of even a whispered word of encouragement, he was met with cold distance. That distance widened daily, not through fights, not through public disagreements, but through absence. A father and son who had once shared the same purpose now stood on either side of a growing divide, one clinging to legacy, the other chasing relevance. Camilla, however, refused to stand frozen in sorrow. Unlike Charles, she saw the Diana Initiative as a threat that demanded response. For years, she had fought to reshape her public image, from scandal's shadow to a role of dignity. Slowly, steadily, she had won ground, moving from reviled outsider to accepted queen consort. But with a single announcement, the name Diana had returned like thunder. Sources whispered that Camilla pushed for the initiative to be folded under palace oversight, sanitized, structured, contained. She wanted it monitored, stripped of independence, and brought back into the fold of royal control. It wasn't hatred that fueled her, but fear. Fear that Diana's ghost, reborn through Kate, could erase the delicate progress she had made. But palace advisors resisted. They understood the optics. To seize control of something born from compassion would not only look heavy-handed, it would look jealous. It would look as if the monarchy was threatened by kindness itself. That image would be disastrous. So they urged another path, silence. And silence became the palace's strategy. No statements, no official endorsements, no public support. Just a wall of nothingness. The unspoken hope was simple. Let the fire burn hot, then let it burn out. Let William and Kate enjoy their moment of popularity, then watch it fade. But that hope was misplaced, because Kate and William weren't building a moment, they were building a movement. And movements don't burn out, they spread, redefining power. The Diana Initiative was not a tribute frozen in nostalgia. It was a blueprint for the future. From the beginning, it operated with a kind of transparency the monarchy had never dared attempt. Every donation accounted for, every partnership documented, every decision shared with the public. No hidden ledgers, no vague press statements. Kate made it clear from the start, trust is not inherited, it is earned. And people believed her because she lived those words. She wasn't speaking from a stage or waving from a balcony. She was sitting in shelters, meeting survivors, listening to grieving parents. She was shaping solutions with experts in maternal health, not as a figurehead, but as an active participant. She wasn't afraid to get her hands dirty, to sit in uncomfortable rooms, to hear hard truths. Her sincerity couldn't be faked, and because of that, it couldn't be dismissed. The initiative quickly grew beyond Britain's borders. In Canada, new mental health programs emerged under its wing. In Southeast Asia, maternal care projects were launched with the same values Diana had once embodied: compassion for the vulnerable, transparency in execution, urgency in action. Climate resilience forums invited William, but not as a royal guest of honor. He attended as a participant, sitting shoulder to shoulder with activists and community leaders, scribbling notes in a plain notebook. In one striking moment, a child in a flood-ravaged community asked him, "Are you here to help, or just to be seen?" His answer was simple: to help. And if I fail, tell me the rawness of that exchange, filmed not by professional crews, but by a volunteer's phone, went viral across the world. But the impact wasn't in the exposure, it was in the humility, a royal admitting that accountability was not beneath him. For centuries, the monarchy had relied on spectacle. But William and Kate were redefining power through something the institution had rarely embraced: humility. And it was working. The media's calculus shifted. Coverage of Charles's ceremonial duties, once automatic, began to feel stale. Headlines no longer lingered on state dinners or ribbon-cutting events. Instead, they buzzed with Kate's shelter visits and William's climate conversations. Social media lit up not when the monarch appeared in a gilded carriage, but when Kate sat quietly with a teenager in crisis. Even within the palace machine, the shift was undeniable. Young staffers, once eager for postings at Buckingham, now angled for roles at Kensington. Photographers knew where the real energy was. Advisors began drifting toward the orbit of William and Kate, recognizing that credibility, not seniority, was now the monarchy's most valuable currency. This wasn't rebellion, it wasn't sabotage, it was realignment. For the first time in decades, influence inside the royal family wasn't measured by who wore the crown, but by who carried the people. And the people had chosen. The Diana Initiative wasn't simply surviving, it was thriving. What began as an idea announced in a quiet room had become a global movement. It wasn't about glamour, it wasn't about nostalgia, it was about action, tangible, visible, undeniable action. Kate had made sure of that. One of her first major steps was to create a national network of mental health support services for children and teens navigating trauma. This wasn't designed for headlines. It was rooted in memory. From the silence William and Harry endured after their mother's death, from the loneliness Kate had witnessed in countless young people across the country, She wanted to ensure that no child would have to navigate grief in isolation. At the same time, she led closed-door sessions with maternal health experts, survivors, midwives, and advocates. There were no cameras, no press releases, only honest conversations. Patterns of systemic neglect and racial bias emerged, and Kate took notes, not speeches. Her goal wasn't symbolism, it was solutions. William, too, embraced this new model. At climate forums, he didn't demand special treatment. He sat with a name tag, not a crown, and asked questions like any other participant. His humility wasn't weakness. It was a strength the world hadn't expected from royalty. And people responded. Not out of obligation, not because tradition told them to, but because they recognized sincerity when they saw it. A teenager at a youth shelter summed it up best. She didn't talk like a royal. She talked like someone who understood. A mother added, "There were no cameras, but she still came." Those voices carried more power than any official statement. And slowly, they painted a new picture of the monarchy. One where service replaced spectacle, where empathy mattered more than etiquette. The Diana Initiative wasn't functioning as a symbolic gesture. It was operating as a movement that was rewriting not just the role of William and Kate, but the definition of royalty itself. And it was only just beginning. Across the globe, partnerships formed with grassroots leaders, governments, and NGOs. But unlike the ceremonial patronages of old, these weren't superficial alliances. William and Kate didn't just attach their names. They showed up again and again in person. They didn't stand above. They stood beside. Younger royals, long adrift in the shadows of an aging institution, began gravitating toward this model. They saw in William and Kate a new blueprint, a way to remain relevant without losing authenticity. They wanted to understand how to contribute without being swallowed by tradition. The monarchy, long seen as reactive, was suddenly evolving. Not by decree, not by official reform, but by choice, by example, by sincerity. And outside the palace, the court of public opinion delivered its verdict. William and Kate weren't waiting for coronation. They were already leading. They weren't the future of the monarchy. They were the monarchy, reshaped, redefined, reborn. The institution had always been a relic, polished for display. But now, for the first time in living memory, it was becoming something else. Not untouchable, not distant, but human. Not because it was forced to, but because William and Kate chose to. And in that choice, they didn't just make history. They redefined it.